The Illuminate Arts and Faith Conference in Chattanooga, Tennessee wants to help you find your tribe. Do you get way too excited about quoting Wendell Berry or C.S. Lewis in conversations with coworkers? Does your Spotify playlist include hymns, a little jazz, and a whole lot of Andrew Peterson? Join your tribe at Illuminate March 31 and April 1 for education and inspiration from speakers Russ Ramsey, Douglas McKelvey, John Hendricks, and others. Find a complete list of session topics and ticket information at southern.edu/illuminate.
In 2024, I set out to meet as many poets as I could and spend an hour with each one. I got more than I bargained for, more insight, more clarity, more hope. It's proved to be one of the richest highlights of my life. 17 writers, 17 deeply human conversations that made me sit up and pay attention. Franz Kafka once said, if the book we're reading doesn't wake us up with a blow to the head, what are we reading for? A book must be the axe for the frozen sea within us. And that's what I hope this new book will do. I hope it wakes us up, my friends. I hope these conversations will be the catalyst for something to be reawakened, re-enchanted, and reinvigorated. It's called An Axe for the Frozen Sea, Conversations with Poets About What Matters Most. I'm Ben Palpin, and I hope you'll come and listen in as I spend a little time with poets like Lucy Shaw, Malcolm Guite, Dana Gioia, and Lee Young Lee. Pull up a chair at the table as we dig into what it means to write well and to live well. An Axe for the Frozen Sea is now available from Rabbit Room Press. Visit the store at rabbitroom.com, or better yet, ask about it at your favorite bookseller.
At the Rabbit Room, we're always saying that art nourishes community and community nourishes art. Here's another way to say the same thing. We can all be allies in bringing good, beautiful, true things into the world. One way you can be an ally with the musicians and writers and artists whose work you care about is to leave a review. It helps other people find and benefit from the work that has meant something to you. And if you want to leave a review for this podcast, well, that'll be okay too. Welcome to the Habit Podcast, conversations with writers about writing. I'm Jonathan Rogers, your host. Don Pape has been in the book business for a long time. These days, he's the publisher at NavPress in Colorado Springs. He's a kind and generous man and much loved in the publishing world. On more than one occasion, he's given me an encouraging word just when I needed it. You're going to enjoy hearing from Don. Don Pape, thank you so much for being on the Habit Podcast.
Hey, fun to be here.
Yeah, so you are a publisher at NavPress. You have been an editor in the past, if I understand correctly, right, Don?
I've acquired, but my career is varied. Publisher, marketing, sales, and I wouldn't say I've edited a book.
Okay.
I've done a sort of a macro edit. I'll read most of the manuscript. I read every manuscript I publish, sometimes 2 or 3 times, and then give my feedback to the editor who is involved in the project.
Well, one of my sort of, I guess you'd say, policies on the Habit Podcast is that I only talk about the craft of writing and not the business of writing. I always say I talk about writing, not publishing. However, I thought it'd be fun to make an exception and just hear from your side of things, just some things that maybe writers don't know about publishing.
Cool.
And
I've got your questions.
Okay, great. So what is a tell us about what an acquisitions editor does, what a substantive editor, what the different kinds of editors do, what a publisher does. Can you just kind of give a quick overview of how things work in a publishing company?
Sure. So, my role is author relations primarily, but with some fingers in the business pie. So I work with our business manager and finance. That's the part, candidly, I like the least. The most fun is working with the authors and the editors, quite frankly. But you mentioned different editors. There's an acquisition editor that is the individual who is out there beating the pavement, trying to find new talent. They will, they'll go out, they'll hear of a pastor that's an up and comer, or they'll go to a writers conference and meet individuals. They're hunters. They're out there looking for the new voices, and most big houses have those out there. They often are not editing the actual product. They're sort of at the macro level.
Yeah.
So they're out there acquiring, getting it in. The developmental editor, and sometimes that can he or she can be an acquisitions editor and a developmental editor, but in most cases, very often it's different roles. The developmental editor they're looking at the whole project and looking at the arc of the book,
Okay.
Moving chapters around. They'll look at it and say, if we put chapter 8 at the very front, that's where the book actually kicks off. Let's move that. It's what they are. It's what the title would suggest. They're developing with the author a stronger book. And then you have the copy editor, and they're the style Nazis, or the style manual cop. They're going through and getting nuances and the grammar, and they have the Chicago manual by their side, guiding them all the way. And then you have the proofreaders that come along after that are just catching grammatical errors, or the comma in the wrong spot, or two spaces behind a comma, heaven forbid, those kind of things. Yeah. But, what's interesting is each of these editors play to different people's dispositions. So, I have a copy editor that is an introvert and loves to just be in that role of, sitting in front of the screen looking at the text. And then you have another editor who is an extrovert and is ideally suited to be the acquisitions person, going out, being the life of the party, finding all the voices, and so on.
So you said you've done acquisitions, not the other roles.
I'm not trained as an editor. I came into this through the back door. I had a part-time job. I was an university staff working on a campus, and I could make extra money working in the university press warehouse, picking and packing and shipping. So I came in through the warehouse. Then I was involved in graphic design, did some marketing, then got moved over to sales. And it was in my role as a sales director that we acquired Harold Shaw Publishers, where, for example, Madeline L'Engle was, and I became her publisher, and then got into the publishing role where I worked with the editorial director and editors and so on. So it has been a circuitous road, but so. I got into this role as publisher that way. Most publishers, would come in through editorial. They're a copy editor, or kind of an entry level, and then they ascend into the publishing role.
Yeah. Interesting. So what is something what's something about your business that surprises people? I mean, that a writer would be surprised to learn about your business, about what publishers do.
Well, yeah, I mentioned to you that I came in through sales, and sales can be a nasty word, a dirty word for editor types. Wordsmiths who ooh and ah over a little word or a syntax or whatever. And I think what your listeners may be surprised to hear is that everyone is a salesperson. So while you have a sales team, a sales manager, sales director, you have telemarketing and telesales, the editorial team are really salespeople. And that's one of the things I, as a publisher, work with our editors to educate them and help them understand you are a salesperson. When you find that author that you love and you want us to publish, you've got to do a sales pitch, initially at the editorial roundtable, at the editorial discussion. and then it will go up the sort of the food chain to the publishing committee, and the editor will present that project, and you've got to do a sales job to them, convincing marketing that it's worth their while, convincing sales that they can actually take it to market. And then you meet in front of the designers, the ones that are going to put a cover to this project. You got to sell them too. And somewhere along the lines, often the editor will meet a speed bump. The designer will say, I don't understand the title, or I've read the manuscript and I'm not figuring out how. And that's a good thing. Yeah. Because those are the first lines of defense before we actually take it to the consumer. And so anyway, all that to say, Jonathan, it's really important that the editors, as much as they hate it, that they know how to sell their project, that they can, really defend it and say, this is, in 30 seconds or less, this is what my book's about.
And so what can writers do for editors? I mean, editors who don't think of themselves as salespeople but are forced into that role, what can writers do for them?
I think the best thing a writer can do is help them understand, what is your book about? When a writer says, well, this is really a book not unlike the Left Behind series, or this is a book very similar to, Star Wars. Well, that's all good and proper, but help me define it a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And so writers can really, writers too need to sell. Yeah. And I've often been at a writer's conference with a writer, and they just haven't done enough of a sales pitch to convince me to say, "Oh, I'm interested in that," that's the same old of 52 other people in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. So, do you still go to the writers' conferences where people are? I mean, is that still part of your world?
Jonathan, if I do, I don't go to acquire. That is not my first priority. I go simply to encourage writers. That may sound silly. So in saying that, I don't go to a lot, to be honest. Yeah. But if and when I do, I always let the sponsoring group or the host or the director know, if I come, I'm happy to be there. But I want you to know I'm not going for them, for their attendees to be acquired by Random House or David C. Cook or whoever. I'm going simply to encourage them in the craft of writing. And so I've met over the years with a variety of writers and just said, if you never get published, that's a really good story. And, write it for your family or write it for yourself, or, that cliche, write it for an audience of one. Mm-hmm. But that's the role I've had over the past 30 years, is just providing that encouragement.
Yeah. So, one thing I've been interested to talk to publishers, editors about is the question of editors and publishers often say what they're really looking for is a unique voice from a writer.
Right.
What do you mean? I assume, is that something you say, Don? And if so, What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, sales will always say, "Oh, do they have a platform?"
Right.
Oh, brother. But yeah, I mean, what when we get a project in editorial, invariably it's that unique voice. It's that freshness to the topic. It's the distinctive. It's Mike Mason writing on the mystery of marriage in a way that you've never thought of marriage. It's your local friend there, Andy Ashworth, writing on hospitality, unlike anything you've ever read. Mm-hmm. It's, Madeline L'Engle on faith and the arts in, Walking on Water. You read it and go, oh, I'm caught up in this. And it's a book on, childcare, but it's so beautifully written. It's rich, it's a severe mercy by Sheldon Van Auken. And they're rare and few and far between, but so that's what you're trying to help. You hope that each author would find their voice and bring their voice rather than, like you said earlier, when I meet with an author and they say, well, I'm just like, Max Lucado or Andy Andrews.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but I want Jonathan Rogers to come through and read it, So it's that uniqueness. It's the Madeline Langles, the Eugene Petersons. I mean, when you read the Message Bible, you've read the King James or the NIV, and then you read it through his voice, and you go, wow, that is such a different take on the Beatitudes.
Yeah. Is there any way to give people guidance on voice? It's when you go to a writers' conference to encourage writers, in what are there ways that you encourage them to have a unique voice or to point them in the right direction or whatever?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, only you can write the Jonathan Rogers story, and only you, so when I meet some writers try so hard to be something they're not. Yeah. And you've got, I think the voice comes from writing from the heart and honing that craft and learning how to tell a story really well rather than a gun for hire. Yeah. Oftentimes I'll be at a writer's conference, for example, and they'll say, what are you looking for? What would you like me to write about? And, do you want me to write a book on marriage? Do you want me to write on divorce? What's hot right now? Rather than, I have a passion. I want to really write well and discover my voice in writing this book about whatever, insert topic here. And the books that, there are so many books coming out, more now than ever probably, but those books that rise to the top are the ones that you go, oh, the distinctive of this person writing on. We did a book on parenting with a writer, Catherine McNeil she's from Chicago. And there's many books for moms on parenting, but her book was exceptional, and it was just her voice. It was just beautiful. And
so voice, tell me about sorry for being insistent. Are you talking about the way she writes sentences? Are you what are you talking about when you said her? Yeah. It's her use of words. It's her stories. How she wrote her stories. Her choice of words. Her pacing. Her thesis. I guess. And the takeaways, the nuances, and and I don't know. I mean, you can go and learn how to write, sort of the craft of spelling and grammar and all those kind of things. But it's then, how do I put my words together? Everyone can sew, but not everyone can needlepoint. And I guess that's what I would say. Yeah. I'm also interested in the idea that, on the one hand, an editor in a publishing house's job is to help a writer get their voice out there. There's always the risk of somehow hijacking, an editor hijacking a writer's voice. Yeah, I mean, a good editor will come alongside the writer and make them good to great. And oftentimes, and I've said this to you, I think I mentioned to you earlier, in my career of over 30 years, on occasion, I've had to take an editor off of a project because they were overpowering the author. They were wanting to write the book. And you have to come alongside of the editor and say, your name is not on the cover. Yeah. It's the author, and you're here to edit the book, not write it. And so yeah, like I said, I have had on occasion, probably 2 or 3 times, pulled an editor off a project and assign a new editor to the project.
because of that.
I'm just curious, how did you, as the publisher, know that was happening?
I was reading the manuscript and reading it, going, this doesn't sound at all like Person X. And, you know, like I said, I'm not going to share names, but, you know, this was someone that you would be familiar with and you probably would have heard of them speak. And then when you go to read their book, you realize, oh my gosh, this doesn't sound at all like him at all. So, yeah.
I often say that's sort of the start of when I talk to writers about voice, and it's a hard thing to talk about because I don't, you know, it's sort of nebulous, right? It's one of the things you know when you see it. You know a unique voice when you see it, but it's kind of hard to know how to pin things down. But I often say you want to make sure in your writing you're never writing a sentence that you wouldn't want to say out loud, that somebody would laugh if they heard you say out loud. You know,
right.
I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg as far as what voice is, but it's a good place to start. You know, am I writing this in such a way that it at least it sounds a little bit like something I might say?
Exactly. So if I'm sitting around a campfire, and you're spinning a yarn, and then I go and pick up, you know, what was your book? The Bark of the Bog. Yeah, and I start reading it, and it feels like it's an Amish novel. I'd go, what happened? You know, how did we go from Jonathan, you know, giving a yarn, you know, giving a campfire talk or story and spinning a yarn around the fire, and then I'm getting this and going, whoa, this isn't all like you.
Yeah, you know, when my books came out, you know, when the Bog Owl came out, I got an email from a friend who I hadn't seen since college. That would have been, you know, 15 years or so. And she said, I read your book and it sounded like you. And I thought, all right, that was a good thing. You know, somebody who hadn't talked to me in 15 years, but she still thought this sounded like me.
That's your highest praise.
Oh, I loved it.
Right?
Yeah.
When someone reads a book and goes, oh, I could hear you saying this.
Yeah.
That's your highest praise.
Yep. That made me feel like I was on the right track.
Yeah. So that suggests you found your voice, because if what your friend said was it sounded like you, and they hadn't seen you since, you know, high school or whatever, then yes, Jonathan, you found your voice.
Yeah. And therefore had a lot more confidence to sort of move forward with my writing. You know, that was the first book I'd ever written, and yeah, that was
affirming.
Yeah. Do you write, or what do you write when you write besides emails?
I have a novel that is gestating.
Really?
Let's put it that way. And one of these days, maybe when I retire, Lord may it be soon, I will get it. But yeah, I have a novel, Jonathan, that I have started, and I dabble at it every now and then. It's set in 1964 Brazil.
Okay.
And yeah, in fact, I've started thinking about it again. Even today, I was thinking I need to get back to that and just start writing it. I was born and grew up in Brazil, first 10 years of my life.
Okay.
So it's kind of informing the book. And what I can't decide is if it's YA or adult fiction, but stay tuned.
Okay. And when have you been back to Brazil a lot since your first 10 years?
Oh, yeah. I went back. Yeah. So I've gone back as an adult now. But what I've done is I've pulled some books on Brazil during that time period. And that's kind of informing my storyline. I won't tell you much about it, but that's the setting, and it's helping me. It'll be a novel, and I'm just seeing where it goes.
Yeah. Sounds like a novel in which place is going to be important.
Yes.
Great. Will there be monkeys involved?
Possibly.
Okay. This is just free advice. Any place you can work monkeys into a story, people love that.
Yeah, there we go.
All right. So last question I always end with, who are the writers who make you want to write?
Well, see if you recognize this writer. This is the opening line of his book, or their book. I don't remember one thing about the day I was born. It hasn't been for lack of trying either.
I know that one.
So, The Charlatan's Boy by you know who.
Wow.
You are one of Leaf Anger, who wrote Peace Like a River.
Yeah.
Eugene Peterson. There's a number of writers, Jonathan, that just they are inspiring, and you just go, wow.
Yeah.
There's John Blaze is a pastor, local pastor. He's written a few books. He's written some poetry. He's amazing. I have just discovered a new writer, Kara Wall. She wrote a novel, just came out from Simon & Schuster, called The Dearly Beloved. Oh, my goodness. It's an incredible story.
When you say Wall, W-A-L-L or W-A-H-L?
Yeah, W-A-L-L.
Okay.
Yeah, and just, again, that voice thing, but just she's writing a story about these two Presbyterian pastors and their friendship and their wives, and go out and read the book. But she's inspired me. She's put the bug in me again to go back and say, I should go back and finish or dabble in writing that novel that I started some time ago.
That's great. So what was it about that book that made you say, I want to go try this again?
Yeah, it's the characters she developed. They just were larger than life, and they were fully developed, three-dimensional. One pastor was this way, another pastor was this way. One wife, spoiler alert, one of the pastor's wives, she is agnostic, and so you imagine this guy in the pulpit every Sunday with his wife who doesn't believe in anything he's talking about.
Yeah.
You just really got in there and felt them and understood their angst, their rhythm, they were fully developed. And I was taken away in the story. I found myself, I don't know if you read Leaf Anger's latest novel,
Virgil Wander.
Wander. Again, you're in this small town on a lake, trying to put together a festival, and all these quirky people. This guy that's running a movie theater that's going to close down any moment. You're just there.
I know. And one thing I love about that book is that it makes me want to go to this place that I would ordinarily not want to go to.
Right.
I want to go see a dismal little town on Lake Superior now.
Exactly. And I think that's the to answer your question, which writers make you want to write? They're the writers that take you away to their place, wherever that place is.
Yeah.
And you just, you almost mourn. When I finished Dearly Beloved, I had to take 2 or 3 days before I could read another novel. I've just lost really dear friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know the books that make me like things that I didn't think I liked. I love just those are the ones I really, really love. Whether it's a genre that I thought I didn't like, or I've talked about this on the podcast before. I love Dickens, and yet Dickens breaks every rule of writing that I think that I say I hold dear. And but I love him anyway, and that makes me love him more.
Yeah.
The fact that he's overcome all my rules, all my prejudices.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that Bruce Springsteen makes me wish I could live in New Jersey. That's saying something right there.
Right. Ride a motorcycle and wore a torn T-shirt, right?
That's right. Yep. Well, Don, thank you so much for taking some time with me today. I have I always love talking to you. It seems like it's been a long time since we've talked, but
it's been a while. Yeah. It's been a while. Jonathan, you need to write another book.
Well, okay. Duly noted. I think I'll try to do that.
Your friend from high school or whatever is awaiting as I'm
Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.
The Rabbit Room has partnered with Lipscomb University to make this podcast possible. Lipscomb has graciously given us access to their recording studio and the Center for Entertainment and Arts building. We're so grateful for their sponsorship, their encouragement, and the good work they do in Nashville. Special shout out as well to the Arcadian Wild for allowing us to use their delightful song Finch in the Pantry as part of this podcast. Check out their album of the same name for more excellent music.
The Habit membership is a library of resources for writers by me, Jonathan Rogers. More importantly, The Habit is a hub of community where like-minded writers gather to discuss their work and give each other a little more courage. Find out more at thehabit.co.
This podcast was produced by The Rabbit Room, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to fostering Christ-centered community and spiritual formation through music, story, and art. All our podcasts are made possible by the generous support of our members. To learn more about us, visit rabbitroom.com, and to become a member, rabbitroom.com/donate.
If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, consider joining the Rabbit Room membership. Your membership helps sustain this community, funding everything from publishing and podcasts and theater productions to events and programs that support artists who create with a Christ-centered vision. We'd love to have you on board. Learn more at rabbitroom.com/member.